All right, well, we've got a brand new tarot reading today, and this one involves a lot of the major arcana, 2/3 of it, in fact. Now, I'll start off by saying I really like that the Two of Swords came up. I've never known why exactly until recently, but I really like the Two of Swords. And the Black Flame Tarot, which you've seen in a number of my videos, actually helped me to see why. But first I should point out that today's reading I've used primarily the Jodorowsky restoration of the Tarot de Marseille. And while I do favor the Black Flame Tarot a lot, it was actually the Jodorowsky restoration that taught me a lot about serious use of tarot. So I do come back to it. I do like to refer to it quite a bit. Now, with that said, the Two of Swords, I often associate twos with the gestative period of growth in one sphere of one's life or another. But you'll see here in the Two of Swords, a lot of growth has already taken place, right? Look at all that foliage. And that represents more than just a seed being planted and watered. That involves, this foliage in this state has a lot more growth under its belt. I want you to look real closely at the center of this card for a moment, and you'll see that dot. Almost looks like an eye, doesn't it? If you had those leaves there, it almost might look like a Lovecraftian monster, but we don't want to think of it that way. Focus for a minute on that eye and think about your self-awakening. The Two of Swords in the Black Flame Tarot adds a little insight to this. We see two things there other than the swords that I think bear mentioning. We've got those two gray boxes over here. Then we have the blue rose. So let's talk about this for a minute. I'll set this here so we don't lose sight of it. The gray boxes and the blue rose both represent the moment of awakening we were just talking about. Any of you who've seen 2001, A Space Odyssey, will recognize those gray structures as the monolith. And it was the monolith that brought awareness of self and how to use tools to the primitive ancestors of man in that film, right? You remember that. And so those stand as a very powerful representation, not of the awakening itself, but the thing that leads to our awakening. And of course, the blue rose has a sort of beyond nature context, because where do you find the blue rose in nature? Think for a minute. You don't. The blue rose does not exist naturally. And so our awakening, our awareness of self, brings us to a state beyond the natural, right? Beyond our natural limitations and into something greater. And so the Two of Swords, I hadn't really thought about any of this until it was put to me in a different format by way of the Black Flame Tarot. And so you'll notice on this channel increasingly I like to compare tarot. I like to compare depictions of things because just like a language, tarot exists as a language of ourselves. And each edition of tarot stands as sort of a dialect within that language. And so I will continue to do that unless you really don't like it. But getting back to the cards at hand, we have that that moment, that catalyst. And then naturally, we find ourselves in a somewhat awakened state. We find ourselves in a different state of mind and being as we rise up, having encountered a different part of ourselves. And it may seem so strong, so outside of the norm, and perhaps even otherworldly, that it could feel like something, an encounter, not only with a different part of ourself, but with a different something altogether. I'm not going to get into whether people have encountered angels or extra-dimensional beings. That discussion really won't do much right now. What do they do with the experience, regardless of how they perceive it? And what can we do when we encounter that other part of ourself, as I like to put it? I want to mention here, too, another rendition from the Black Flame Tarot of Judgment, or as it was named therein, the Aeon. We see the individual, comparable to the individuals here. And what do we see happening? We see an encounter with a separate being, or a higher part of self, here represented by the Egyptian figure Set. Call it what you want. Call it your higher self, your future self, your transcended self, your holy guardian angel. Set, your your familiar, your flying spaghetti monster, whatever you want to call it, this very personal daemon that you encounter. Do something productive with it, and it will do something productive with you. And then what do? What do we do with that productivity, or how do we manifest that? Well, we go out and we change something. By our changed view, we may change the views of other people. And I don't mean to say we want to proselyte, we don't want to try and convert people to reading tarot. We don't want to convert people to the left-hand path. These tools work for the people that they'll work for. But we want to share those findings. If we want to share those findings of things that work for us, and processes and systems that we've found beneficial with other people on the left-hand path, wonderful. If we want to share some of what we've found and discovered with people not on the same path that we find ourselves on, change the verbiage, change the vocabulary, make it intelligible and non-threatening to them, because even if they don't adopt your exact way of looking at things and working on things, what harm can come from helping them to improve in their lives? We want to do that. They may never believe or discover some of the secrets that we've discovered. But it doesn't mean they can't take advantage of them while they remain on the mortal plane. So if you've found something, share it. It might help someone at work. And as you transform those environments around you and for other people, or help them to come to realizations, practical realizations for themselves, it'll improve the quality of life for everyone, including yourself. So, a very, very transformative spread today. Excited to see it, because that means we can expect some changes and transformations, but we have to first experience that catalyst. So, find what works for you for generating that kind of experience and put it to good use for yourself, for those around you, and in turn for yourself again. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. Some of this can get a little confusing, so please, if it seemed off or a little difficult to understand, don't hesitate to comment, to leave questions, or to leave other ideas for interpretations that maybe I left out. Subscribe. Make sure to subscribe so you can get the updates as they occur on this channel. They don't occur as often as on the Facebook or the Instagram, so please make sure to follow me on those. Whereas this channel gets updated a few times a week, those get updated pretty much every day. So you'll want to follow those. Make sure to share. And as always, especially with this particular reading before us, have a wonderful day and make sure to keep transforming.